All right, we're back with RockForever. We got a very special guest. You know him from so many of your favorite records. He is a guitarist, songwriter, producer. Please welcome DannyKortchmar.
Hello, everybody. Glad to
Yeah,
be.
fantastic to join us. By the way, who was the first person to call you Cooch?
That's a good. I know. I was thinking about that the other day. I think it was my old pal Michael Braziller, who I went to summer camp with. That's where I got the name. I was 12 or 13 in summer camp. They couldn't pronounce my last name, which is Kortchmar, so it came out Kortchmar and then Cooch.
Oh wow! Well, it's definitely stuck, and everybody loves you by that name. Now, obviously, you used to vacation in Martha's Vineyard and all that, coming up, and got to know a then unknown James Taylor. Talk about those early bands and who influenced you and working with James.
Well, James and I met on Martha's Vineyard. Both our families went up there for the summer, and that's where I met him. Martha's Vineyard was very different then than it is now. Now it's an enclave for zillionaires, but back then it was very kind of laissez-faire and a very kind of almost bucolic situation. And it was a middle class thing. That's my parents went there because they could afford it, amazingly. So now no one can afford it, but that's where I met James, and we started playing acoustic guitars together. I loved Lightnin' Hopkins and other blues guys at that time, and so did James. We listened to a lot of folk music. We listened to a lot of rhythm and blues. We listened to a lot of hard blues, all kinds of music. And that was our background. And we started playing music together when we were little kids. I think I met James when we were 14 or 15, around that time.
And what do you think it was about him that attracted you? And what do you think, likewise, that he looked to you to help make that music?
Well, when we first started hanging out together, the thing I liked about him was he was very funny and charming and bright, and so I didn't even know he could. He had all the talent that he had. It was later that I found out that what a great singer he was, and then he started playing guitar and got better and better. Every summer he would get amazingly better and basically have the style that you hear him play now on acoustic, which is his definite signature style. Um, I'm not sure how to answer that, my man. We grew up together. We played music together. He was a very close friend of mine then and now. And what can I say? We were very lucky to run into each other at the same time. And I think we influenced each other considerably.
Yeah, well, obviously it clicked musically, and of course, Fire and Rain, put you guys on the map, and the rest is history. Do you remember the first time you heard your songs on the radio?
Well, yeah, I remember the first time I heard songs I played on the radio, and I flipped, of course. That was the holy grail was to be on the radio, and so yeah, I remembered it very well. But before that, we had a band. I was in a band called the King Bees back in the mid '60s, and one of our tracks got on the radio very briefly on one of the stations in New York, and so that was probably the first time I heard it because we knew it was going to be played at a certain time. So we hovered by the radio, and there it was, and it was really a thrill. And it still is amazingly great to hear something you worked on being played on the radio or in the drugstore or in the market or wherever you are.
Yeah, I mean, music is meant to be shared, and that communal process of radio and people hearing you, it definitely completes the circle. Well, I know many great records that you made, of course, with Linda Ronstadt and Billy Joel and Jackson Brown and Carole King and all that. Talk a little bit about working on Tapestry, because obviously that became such an iconic album for Carol.
Right. Well, Carol had already made two albums before Tapestry that Lou Adler produced and was taking care and were on his label. And I thought they were both great. I've been working with her for a while, playing on her demos, the Goffin and King songs. They had obviously a publishing deal. They would make demos of their songs, and they would call me to play on them. And I learned an awful lot from Carol, who was an absolute genius as a producer and engineer as well as a songwriter. Anyway, so we go in to do Tapestry at this point because the first two albums I thought were so good. I didn't have high hopes for this one. Although I knew the songs were great, I knew she was great. I had no doubts in my mind about her brilliance. But I was kind of skeptical about whether people would recognize it or not.
Yeah.
So we went, we all played together. The whole thing took, I think, 3 weeks altogether.
Wow.
And
It must feel good seeing her go into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame after all these years.
you bet. Oh, absolutely. No one deserves to be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame more than Carol.
Yeah. Well, I know working with Jackson Brown, you guys made some great records, Somebody's Baby and Shaky Town and all that you wrote together. A brilliant songwriter. What can you say about your work with Jackson?
Well, he's one of the reasons that I got to be so snobbish about songs, because if you're working with these guys, brilliant song after brilliant song after brilliant song, you get to have like real, high standards about what a good song is. And, from him, I learned, obviously playing his songs was an education in how you put a song together and have it be meaningful and soulful. So I enjoyed every minute of playing music with Jackson, and I've known him a real long time, and we always have a great time together. He's a dear, dear friend of mine, and I love him very much.
Yeah, we're seeing Jackson and James out there touring together. It must be definitely great. Now, obviously, your work with Don Henley produced a lot of great records. Dirty Laundry, which you guys play in the set with the Immediate Family, and New York Minute. All She Wants to Do Is Dance. What did you learn from working with Don?
Well, again, we're talking about working on a very, very high level. Don is one of the great, great singers and lyricists you'll ever encounter. I mean, he's a very, very talented and soulful individual. So we had kind of an open schedule. We could do anything we wanted, and I would go home and work on tracks, work on music, and I'd play him a demo of a track I had with just music, and he would go, "Well, I think I could write to that," and we would start recording it immediately. And then at some point, he'd write the lyrics and melody for it. So what a treat! It was just incredible. And like I said, working with these people at the very height of their powers was inspirational and educational, and just on every level extraordinary.
Yeah, it's probably the hardest thing in the world is to write a song that the whole world wants to sing,
Hmm.
and you've experienced that many many times, with this caliber of people. And it's there's no shortcut, but you got to kind of glean a little of the DNA, like you say, that it takes to put a melody and a chorus and all those great lyrics together.
Hmm. Well, that's right. Yeah, and again, you got to follow your instincts. That's all one can do. In other words, I've never sat down and gone, "I'm going to write a hit song," nor have I been absolutely sure a song that we worked on was going to be a hit, because my taste is that's what I like. That's not necessarily what everyone else is going to like. As a matter of fact, mostly it isn't. you know, so all you can do is do the best you can and follow your instincts, and do what you think move. Follow. If it moves you, then it's got a good chance of moving other people.
Yeah, well, it all starts with self. If you can't get excited about it, it's a little hard to be authentic, and let it resonate with others. Now, I noticed, speaking of Lou Adler, that you even did music in the Up and Smoke Cheech and Chong movie. How did that come about?
That's right. Yeah. Well, this was Lou's foray into producing and directing a feature film with Cheech and Chong, and he called me and said, "Can you come up with some music for this? For this film." Absolutely. Anything Lou wanted to do, I was eager to do it. He was is a great, great guy and a great producer, one of the absolute best record producers ever. And whatever he wanted to do, count me in. I really had nothing but respect and affection for Lou then and now. So the first thing I did was call my pal Waddy, and we sat down and came with some licks, some guitar riffs, some ideas. And once we had two or three things, we went into the studio and started pounding them out.
Well, certainly an iconic movie that it was, and it's crazy to see this many years later, seeing cannabis, become legal in so many states, especially here in California and
Right.
so many surrounding states. And we hope soon that it becomes nationally. I mean, it's a plant, and the hemp plant's been around for centuries, thousands of years. And it's amazing all these things that are legal with all these drugs and alcohol and cigarettes, and people are so worried about cannabis, that it's some gateway drug. What's your thought about the legalization?
Well, I think the federal and local government should concentrate on opiates, not marijuana. Opiates are killing people, and that's where the concentration should be. Marijuana, nobody, I don't believe marijuana has ever killed anyone, you know. And like you said, it's a plant that grows out of the ground. It's not a manufactured drug that, you know, that a company manufactures. And I think that's where, you know, law enforcement and drug enforcement should go to, is opiates.
Yeah, well, it's like that beautiful palm tree behind you. You know, it's as natural as it gets, and in moderation. I'm sure it's helped a lot of your fellow creatives. You know, play music and come up with great songs. It just, you know, relaxes you, loosens you up. Now, obviously, the music business has changed radically. It's hard to even recognize what we had growing up with the beautiful record stores and freeform radio where DJs could play what they felt and loved, and you know, record companies that would take a chance on someone based on talent as opposed to some kind of analytics or some kind of computer driven thing. What do you miss most about, you know, the great record and music business that we grew up with?
Well, you just named some of it. Being able to go to Tower Records, one of these temples of music, was an extraordinary thing where you saw every kind of music right in front of you and available. And the people you were there with were also major music fans. The people that worked behind the counters knew about the records that were coming out and what was about to come out, what had just come out. So you were in the middle of a very wonderful situation. As for the music business changed when people realized how much money there was to be made in it. And that's when the lawyers and the businessmen came in and less than, and took over more than creative people. So that's when it changed, and this is the way of capitalism. If there's money to be made, you know, here comes everyone. Here come the lawyers, here come the businessmen, here come the shysters, here come the guys that want to make a quick buck. And I think that changed the music business, certainly, at that point. After that, then it's now, and it's been changing ever since. It's been morphing into stuff ever since, you know, obviously with streaming, and, you know, changed everything again. So it's a constantly evolving situation.
Yeah, well, we have our memories, and we have our love for music, which carries on, which brings us up to the great band, The Immediate Family. I know you had the section, you know, back in the '70s, and some of the same players in there. Talk about how The Immediate Family came together.
Well, Immediate Family came together because I had received an offer to do a record, a solo record from a Japanese label. And I said, oh, okay, sure. I wasn't doing that much. Yeah, I'll do a solo record for the Japanese label. And then I started thinking, well, who do I want to work with? And of course, I just assumed those fellas that are in Immediate Family, that they were all on the road, because these guys are among the most demand musicians in the world. And amazingly, Russ and Lee were around. So that was the core of the situation. I had my buddy Steve Postel, who would help me with the pre-production and post-production. It was very, very helpful. And later we were there, I think 3 days, 4 days to cut the basic tracks. The last day, Waddy came in. He had been on the road with Stevie Nicks, and he came in, and we started. You know, at that point, it became obvious to all of us that it would be great to be in a band. I had been offered to go over to Japan and do some gigs over there, and everyone wanted to go. And at that point, I said, you know, let's call it The Immediate Family. Let's have a name for it. Let's make it a band. You know, I always wanted to be in a great rock and roll band, always. And this is one of the greatest. I think we're very good. Once they do it.
Yeah,
so that's how we got together.
It must be hard to come up with the set. You guys have so many great songs from your past. You know, you got to write original songs, of course, to keep it new and keep it fresh.
That's right.
But you know, being such a great session player, and of course, Lee's played on like 2,600 records, and you know, everybody's got thousands of credits. But you know, going on the road or playing in front of people or hearing people cheer or sing your songs back to you and all that's got to be the greatest feeling.
Yeah, it's a tremendous rush. First of all, the sound of a rock and roll band in full cry, like us on stage, the roar, the sound of it is something I've always been addicted to, and I'm certainly addicted to it with this band. We make a hell of a racket, and you know, so that part of it is a thrill. And of course, to see people respond to our music. Now, we're used to seeing people respond to the great, you know, acts that we've backed up, and all the brilliant artists that we've worked with. But this is the first time for all of us that we're getting kind of recognition that we're getting based on our own music and us. We're not backing anyone up. It's just us. So that's a major thrill for all of us.
Yeah, well, I know it's been a crazy couple of years dealing with the pandemic, and like you say, it's probably reeled some of these guys in from being on the road like they always you were,
Yes.
and putting this record together. Where did you record it, and what was the process when you went into making the immediate family that you wanted to achieve?
Well, we started off doing pre-production. That was mostly at Steve Postel's little studio around the corner from where I live. So we did that. Then we went into Jackson Brown's studio, Groove Masters. As I was telling you before, Jackson Brown is a dear friend of all of ours, and we love him very much. And he was kind enough to allow us to go in and use the studio for a reasonable price so we could afford it. And we went in there for 3 days and we cut, I don't know, as many tracks as we could, 14 tracks or something. Then after that, we went back to Steve Postel's and we did post-production, overdubs. We overdubbed some solos, lead vocals, harmony parts, stuff like that. So there was, like I said, about 3 days of tracking and then overdubbing, subsequent overdubbing.
Yeah, well, it's got an amazing sound like you guys always do, and I know people can't get enough. You just toured a bunch of East Coast and Midwest dates, and it's coming up. We got a great show Sunday night at the Canyon Club in Santa Clarita. Where, after the break, do we go from here with the immediate family? What's the plans next?
The next thing that's going to happen is we're going to go back to work on album 2. We've already got several tracks recorded. I think 8 or 9 tracks recorded for that. And we've got a bunch of tunes that we still have to work on, finish, arrange, and then we're going to go back in the studio and record the rest of it. So that's what we're going to do January and part of February, is trying to get this album together, especially because there's a documentary, as I said, being made about us, and we'd like to have our album come out at the same time the documentary comes out.
Yeah, talk about that documentary. Did a filmmaker approach you, or what was the process?
Yeah, we were approached by Denny Tedesco, who did the Wrecking Crew documentary, which was a terrific film that won a lot of awards. And we have an interesting story. So he and his producers contacted me and contacted us, and when we talked about it, and I think they realized there's a hell of a movie here, a hell of a story. So then we proceeded to find out, to get in touch with all of our kind of famous friends and see, who would do interviews. And they were all, we did many, many interviews with, well, we didn't. Denny did many interviews with people we'd worked with over the years. And that's a big part of it. So it's a hell of a story. We started off in 1971, Russ Lee and myself. That's more than 50 years. And then with Waddy, that's only 45 years, At Postel, that's 15 years. So, there's a lot of history here with all of us. And it's just an incredible situation. And that's what makes a very compelling story.
Yeah, well, half a century of collaborations. That's way more than most marriages last. That's for damn sure.
That's right.
And you guys are a part of the fabric of American society, and of course the soundtrack to so many of us, around the world. It's amazing how music recorded in a small room somewhere can touch someone in a faraway land.
Right. It is wonderful. It's a miracle, really.
What's the best website or social media for people to follow the immediate family?
Immediate Family Band, I think, is our website. And there's lots of stuff on there, videos, pictures, music, all kind of stuff. So I think that's probably your best bet.